What's up guys and welcome back to On The Brick, where today I'm going to be looking at AV figures again. Okay, I know some of you are probably sitting there going, again? Really, John? Didn't you already make 2 other videos about them? And yes I have, but that was over a year ago at this point. And in this last year, I've heard a lot of things coming from and about AV figures, especially in regards to some of the concerns that I specifically had. So I wanted to go and look back at them and see what has changed over this last year, what has improved, if anything got worse, or what has stayed the same. I am going to be talking a little bit about some of the things I spoke about in those first few videos because, well, I'm comparing them. So if you haven't seen them, maybe consider doing a quick refresher and then continuing with this one. So I wanted to start with something that I personally got a lot of criticism for, and that was my dislike of the smiley face. And yeah, I do understand where you guys are coming from. It's just a smiley face. But it was unprofessional, especially when you're doing it while claiming that the problem that was yet to be fixed was indeed fixed. When I'm doing business of any sort, I do want to be professional, and all of my closest friends and family will tell you that's a weird thing for me to say. I love being relaxed, I love being more on the casual side of things. I'm not ever gonna really dress up or be in a suit or anything like that, nor will I ever be that guy who does business words and tells you things like, hey, let's touch base and whatnot. No, you know what, just talk to me like a human. But there is a difference between casual and unprofessional, and unfortunately for me, that smiley face really came off and made the entire sentiment unprofessional. It wasn't just, how dare this guy put a smiley face, it was, oh, this guy just doesn't care. However, if you remember, that was all in response to a problem that I had with instructions they were selling, and now AV Figures no longer sells instructions. So it really just doesn't matter anymore. I'm not sure why exactly they finished selling instructions, but if that's the choice they wanted to make, okay. But the other really big issue that I had was their customer service. I was getting responses at honestly kind of ridiculous times, and even had to explain multiple times what the actual problem was before anything was done, and then even then it was still over a month before anything was actually done. It was really poor customer service, actually. And if you've watched this channel for any length of time, then you probably know I highly value customer service. You could have the absolute best product ever in the world, but I would not care if your customer service was terrible. If a store is not able to value its customers, then I don't want to be sending people there. That's why there are some very specific stores I have never mentioned on this channel. But I didn't really purchase that much from AV Figures over this past year. In fact, I didn't make any purchases until very recently. So instead, I went out and I asked people for their experiences. I received a fair number of responses, and to be completely honest, all except one were really good. The majority of the responses I got were from people like this, just saying, hey, I ordered from them, everything went well. Please do pause and read these for yourself if you would like to, but seriously, the majority of these are all really good comments praising AV Figures, and that is wonderful. I know for a fact that AV Figures did watch my earlier videos about him because Andrew himself told me. And to see videos like the ones that I made and then go, alright, how do we improve and how do we get better is seriously awesome to do. It's an incredibly difficult thing for most people to do for some reason, as taking criticism, warranted or not, can be a challenge. So to take that criticism and then go, hey, let's get better, that deserves recognition, and it has been recognized. The products from AV Figures were always good, but now the customer service side has started to reflect on that. There are still some parts that I personally don't really agree with though. For instance, this policy when it comes to printed figures is a little convoluted. If you send out a bad figure, it should be replaced or refunded. I know sometimes people try to take advantage of this, but in my opinion, if the figure is noticeably misprinted, it should be fixed. And I did see several instances over the last year where this exact issue occurred and no replacement was ever sent, including from prominent figures in the community. Actually, since I'm talking about things that I don't like, please bear with me because I'm just gonna bunch all of that together right now and then we'll end on the positive stuff. So outside of the printed figure stuff, there's actually only two issues that I still really have with AV figures. One which is probably going to sound dumb, and then one which is understandable, but unfortunately for me, still a little bit of an issue. The first is really just a sentiment that I've seen in the community, and that is that AV figures does not own decals. I don't just mean the designs, which are a thing of their own as well. I mean the act of decaling minifigures. I want to be really clear here. Decals have been around for a lot longer than AV figures have. And I mean Star Wars decals. I had some in like 2007, 2008. But when it comes to AV figure specific designs, that's also a little weird. It's like custom Star Wars sets or custom sets in general. Technically, you don't own the design. Say I wanted to make a custom version of Vader's castle. Even if I put all the pieces together to make something of my own, I never actually designed Vader's castle. Just like how AV figures didn't make clone troopers or purge troopers or any of that. Now, yeah, I'm sure they have actual very specific designs that they did create, and that's different. Because obviously things that AV figures came up with themselves are theirs, but things like the 501st or anything like that, that should be fair game. And I know some of you are probably going to be saying, well, other people do make decals. Sure, but there's also a huge difference in quality, because they can't do things similar to AV. But the other actual far more important issue is and still remains to be the pricing of things. Okay, I'm going to explain this in just a little bit, but let me be very clear from the beginning here. I do understand why some of these items cost what they cost. That does not make it justifiable, it just makes it understandable. In my last videos, I talked about their Bad Batch shuttle and how the $400 asking price was way too much, something that a lot of people disagreed with me on. But either that sentiment has changed or more people started to realize this or something, because in Tuesday's video, when I talked about the $225 asking point for this starfighter, literally every comment was saying how that was way too much and it was way overpriced, even when you include the figure. And that's because it is too expensive. The Bad Batch shuttle was too expensive, the starfighter was too expensive, even the newly released Bad Batch figures were way too expensive. Something that AV Figures himself even knew, because he commented on this saying that people would complain. And if you know people are going to complain about the price being too high, there's probably a reason for that. $50 for this crosshair figure is way too much. Okay, to be fair, I think it was like $45, but still, when you can get a fully printed figure from somewhere like Clone Army Customs for $27, including a helmet, this is way too much. I get that the helmet is decaled, but you're saying that you're going an extra $15 just for that. Don't get me wrong, this crosshair is a wonderful looking figure and I actually wanted to buy one, but not for that price tag. So why are these things so expensive? First, you have to cover the actual cost of the item. For instance, if Clone Army Customs can sell this figure for $27, it probably costs around $20 to make, depending the percentage they're earning. Second, they have to actually earn money, so that's where the extra markup comes in. Third, and this is the biggest one, AV Figures is not just one person. Unlike pretty much any other store out there in this community, AV has a full team and they need to be paid. I personally don't think that raising the prices of these items is the proper way to do that, but if that's what they've chosen to do, that's what they've chosen to do. There's also some things that I think could just be cut back on, like in the custom Starfighter video, I mentioned how the custom printed box wasn't really necessary. And yes, I know that they're not making any more sets, so I know that doesn't really matter. But I also did want to talk about that really quick and just mention that while I'm not entirely certain why they're not making any more sets, I wouldn't be surprised if it was because the cost and hassle of doing it all just wasn't worth it. Again, this is not a $225 set. even understanding the cost breakdown of the pieces, the printed parts, and the custom figure, along with the cost of the custom box, and then making sure that you actually earn a profit and can pay your employees, this is just way too expensive for what it actually is. Unfortunately, in the real world, most people don't care about AV figures. They don't care about the name. They might care that it's a custom set, but look, Brick Vault doesn't even get that notoriety right now. So yeah, unfortunately that's just the reality of custom LEGO. The world at wide just doesn't care. So again, what I'm trying to say here is that I do understand the price breakdown of all this and why everything costs what it does. I just think even with that in mind, it's still too expensive. And, well, even though these figures have completely sold out, which is awesome to see, the custom LEGO set still hasn't, and like I said in the last video, that says a lot about AV. But, and this is why I wanted to end on the positive note, I am definitely willing to pay more money for better customer service and better products. I do think these are a little too expensive still, but the quality of what we're getting is actually worth it. There are always going to be problems, always. That's just the reality of having a store and the reality of being human. But I personally feel a lot better now knowing that I can buy something from AV Figures, and if something goes wrong, it'll probably be fixed in a timely and appropriate manner. Because even though I'm not necessarily a fan of the printed minifigures policy, when some people ordered this Starfighter, they did have missing pieces or some problems, and all of that was actually fixed. They weren't just told to go fend for themselves, it was handled appropriately, as it should be on a $225 custom set. Point being, a lot of the criticisms that I had in my last videos are no longer valid because AV Figures took the time to make sure that they weren't. Not in any bad way, but by improving the store, the customer service, and the quality of products, which again, were already good. And that is how you handle negative reviews, by making sure they're not true through improving your service and yourself. So is AV Figures worth it? Yeah. Even with the higher prices, you are getting good quality now. As always though, I want to know your thoughts, so please do let me know your stories and experiences in the comments down below so other people can see them and make their own decisions too. Also, I just want to say that out of all the people I reviewed last year, Clone Army Customs and AV Figures are the only two still actively going. There's also Big Kid Bricks, but surprisingly I haven't actually reviewed them yet. Anyway, this was a bit of a ramble and whatnot, but I did just want to say that AV has gotten a lot better and you should check them out if you haven't yet. As always, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to help with the algorithm and whatnot, and consider checking out my Patreon if you would like to help me continue making future videos. And if you do, you could join the likes of people like Jonathan and Project Elements. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.